In the space of 48 hours, two authoritative voices from the American episcopate broke a silence that, after the conclave, seemed increasingly dense. On December 25th and 26th, Cardinal Raymond Burke and Monsignor Joseph Strickland spoke each in his own tone, but with a surprising convergence of content. The first, through an interview with the Catholic Herald. The second, through a reflection published on the blog Pillars of Faith. Two different channels, the same ecclesial concern. Burke chose the measured language of institutional analysis. Speaking of the conclave that led to the election of Pope Leo XIV, he offered an internal insight, rarely so explicit. The College of Cardinals, he explained, is now numerically larger than the traditional limit, exceeded by 13 units thanks to a dispensation granted by the previous pontificate. But the numbers themselves aren't the crux of the matter. What emerges as more serious is the lack of extraordinary consistories for over 10 years. Those meetings, Burke recalled, are not merely ceremonial moments, but essential instruments of real collegiality, in which the cardinals learn to know one another, to exchange views, and to exercise their role as advisors to the Pope, often defined as a sort of papal senate. The consequence, at the most delicate moment in the life of the Church, was a conclave in which many electors knew little or nothing about each other, a finding that, read between the lines, raises questions about the quality of collective discernment and the strength of internal bonds within the body responsible for electing the Roman pontiff. This is not a personal criticism, but a structural analysis that highlights a systemic fragility. When Burke focused on the figure of Leo XIV, his tone remained cautious but meaningful. Personal contact was limited, he admitted, but a natural cultural and ecclesial affinity was recognized, linked to their shared American roots. At the same time, the Cardinal insisted on an element that appears central to understanding the profile of the new Pope: the approximately 30 years spent in Peru, an experience that profoundly shaped him within the ecclesial life of South America, and which, according to Burke, allows him to act as a bridge between two worlds, today often perceived as opposed, that of North America and that of Latin America. While the discussion on the conclave and the new Pope remained within the confines of institutional discretion, the discussion on the liturgy took on much clearer contours. Burke firmly reaffirmed the vision proposed by Benedict XVI, according to which the two forms of the Roman Rite must both be recognized and celebrated in their full integrity. This is not a pragmatic compromise, but a theological principle. Both forms belong to the nature of the divine worship of the Church. In this framework, the traditional Latin Mass is presented not as a tolerated exception, but as a living heritage used for some 15 centuries, capable of nourishing the spiritual lives of countless saints, martyrs, confessors, and theologians. A legacy that, in Burke's words, can never be lost, and which the Church has a duty not only to preserve, but to promote. This affirmation takes on particular weight in a context marked by restrictions, suspicions, and attempts to marginalize the ancient rite. The next day, Strickland's voice gave this diagnosis a more direct and prophetic tone. In his address, the bishop shifted the focus from the ecclesial structure to the heart of the Christian message. Salvation, he wrote, is costly, and this very fundamental fact tends to be forgotten today. The temptation, increasingly evident, is to lighten the gospel, to make it more easily acceptable, to smooth its edges so as not to offend the sensibilities of the contemporary world. According to Strickland, this process manifests itself when the Church speaks more of comfort than of conversion, more of synodality than of truth, more of accompaniment than of fidelity. This is not a condemnation of synodality or accompaniment per se, but of their elevation to supreme criteria, detached from revealed truth. The result is a gospel stripped of its saving power, incapable of challenging, of calling to renunciation, of confronting humanity with the true weight of the cross. The bishop also denounces a shift in language and attitude toward tradition. What was once received with reverence is now perceived as an obstacle. What was transmitted as a gift is labeled as rigidity. In this shift, the Church risks adopting the categories, priorities, and even the rhetoric of the secular world, failing to offer anything truly different. The conclusion is theologically unequivocal. Christ did not come to make the world comfortable, and the Church betrays its mission when it conforms to the world to the point of making the cross disappear from the horizon. This is precisely where Burke and Strickland's words converge. Although they come from different perspectives, both point to the same fracture: a church that risks losing its supernatural identity in its attempt to be acceptable. Liturgy, doctrine, and pastoral language thus become symbolic battlefields where something much more profound than a simple disciplinary question is at stake. One element emerges with particular force and is difficult to dispute: the growing attraction of young people towards the traditional Latin Mass. These are not nostalgic believers, but people who have often never experienced that rite, and who discover it as profoundly nourishing, capable of restoring a sense of the sacred, of mystery, and of sacrifice. A fact that disproves the narrative according to which tradition is a brake on ecclesial vitality. The controversial nature of these interventions lies not in their polemical tone, but in their timing. They come at the beginning of a new pontificate and raise questions that cannot be dismissed as relics of a bygone era. Without personal attacks, but with a clarity that brooks no equivocation, Burke and Strickland draw a line. On one side, a church that preserves truth, liturgy, and the cross. On the other, a church that risks dissolving into permanent adaptation. Two voices, two styles, one diagnosis, and a question remains unanswered. Will the new course be able to recover what has been put aside, or will the tension between tradition and the world continue to shape the very heart of ecclesial life? Perhaps with the January consistory, we will have some answers. If you liked the video, comment. Amen. God bless you.